I'm writing this from the spare bedroom of the apartment my wife and I moved into 2 months ago, the one with the noisy radiator that hisses like a feral cat every dawn. It's the first place I've ever felt entirely mine, which is embarrassing to admit at 31, but it makes sense once you understand how I grew up. For 3 decades, my family's emotional real estate belonged to my little brother, Liam, and the collection of phantom illnesses he wielded like a backstage pass to everyone else's time, money, and attention. This is the unfiltered version of why my parents and Liam weren't invited to my wedding, how he finally admitted everything was fake, and what I did with that confession. If you're hoping for forgiveness, skip to another post. I don't do Hallmark arcs. I do consequences. Liam is 3 years younger. The first incident happened when he was 7. We were at the mall. I wanted to try on roller skates. Mom was lacing them for me when Liam fell against a rack of jeans, clutching his chest. He said everything was spinning. Paramedics came. No cause was found, but Mom concluded he suffered from episodes. For the next 14 years, episodes governed our household like martial law. Examples. My 10th grade homecoming was canceled because Liam's heart fluttered when I turned on the hairdryer, and the noise supposedly aggravated his nervous system. Dad wouldn't let me drive myself to SAT prep because Liam's dizzy spells meant we needed a flexible vehicle at home, just in case. The dog I'd wanted since kindergarten was rehomed after 2 weeks because Liam told Mom its barking made his migraines worse. Every disappointment was framed as me being selfish for wanting normal teenager stuff, while my brother struggled to survive another day. Doctors tested him for everything: epilepsy, POTS, heart arrhythmia, brain tumors, MRIs, EKGs, tilt tables. Nothing. Each negative result just made Mom dig deeper for rarer explanations, and Liam learned the script: dramatic fatigue, mysterious pain, tearful gratitude for any small allowance. Dad called him our delicate miracle. I called him what he was, a professional patient, but only inside my own head, because speaking up meant being labeled cruel. College was my first jailbreak. I accepted a scholarship 3 states away and left without looking back. Orientation week felt like detox. Nobody texted hourly symptom updates or expected me to rearrange my life. The relief was so intense I cried the first night in the dorm, not because I was homesick, but because I wasn't. Freedom lasted 5 semesters. Mid-junior year, Mom phoned at 3 a.m., sobbing that Liam had collapsed. I maxed a credit card flying home only to find him swiping through Tinder on the living room couch. He claimed the collapse happened, but he was pushing through. Dad called my trip proof of sisterly love. I called Bank of America to negotiate payment on a ticket I couldn't afford. That was the moment I realized the illness hurt me financially too. Enter Riley. We met in a biomechanics lab. She laughed when I described her as the cute engineer who smells like solder and lavender. On our 3rd date, she asked why my shoulders shot up every time my phone buzzed. I gave her the short version of Liam's condition. She tilted her head and said, "What condition?" That single, simple challenge loosened the first brick in the wall I'd been leaning on. By year 2 of dating, we lived together. Riley kept spreadsheets for everything: utilities, meal planning, even chores. So naturally, she started tracking Liam's episodes after seeing how each one derailed my day. Within months, she plotted a pattern. Incidents spiked the night before family obligations and vanished whenever Liam took a weekend trip with friends. Riley showed me the graph: 2 neat columns: required responsibility and symptom severity. The correlation was sickeningly perfect. Therapy followed. My therapist used words like parentification, medical child abuse, and enmeshed dynamics. She pointed out that Liam wasn't the only issue. My parents were addicted to the narrative of having a fragile son and a resilient daughter. Resilience sounds admirable until you realize it's a fancy term for tolerated neglect. Then Riley proposed. Candle-lit living room, our favorite vinyl spinning, a ring tucked inside the case of Mario Kart, because we met trash-talking each other over a Switch. She said, "I want to marry you, but I refuse to spend the rest of my life orbiting your brother's emergencies." I said yes, then burst into tears of relief because someone else finally labeled those emergencies as optional. We scheduled a small May wedding, garden venue, 60 guests, a jazz trio playing lo-fi covers. Riley sent digital save the dates. That's when the fireworks began. Mom called demanding we move the date because Liam had started IV vitamin therapy on Thursdays and might experience crashes over the weekend. She suggested we hold the wedding in our hometown so Liam could rest between events. When I refused, she tried compromise. Invite Liam's nurse, set up a quiet room, shorten the ceremony. Each suggestion made me firmer about the original plan. Mom replied with a screenshot of Liam's pale face hooked to an IV bag, captioned, "Look what your selfishness causes." I replied with no text, just the shrug emoji. Dad texted, "We raised you better." I started drafting my guest list minus 3 names. Reddit warned me about wedding crashers, so we hired legitimate security and deputized 2 of Riley's rugby teammates as extra muscle. The day itself was perfect in a way I'd never experienced. Speeches full of inside jokes, zero chaos, genuine peace. I expected to feel guilty. Instead, I felt 40 pounds lighter. Honeymoon was Santorini, whitewashed roofs and volcanic sand. I violated our no family contact rule once, opening my phone to 37 missed calls from Mom, 5 from Dad, and a single text from Liam. Hope the big day was worth it. I turned the phone off. We drank wine, took photos, and bought a cheap watercolor from a street artist that now hangs over the radiator. Silence lasted 6 weeks, and then Liam called. He said he needed to confess. Curiosity outweighed caution, so I met him at a greasy spoon halfway between our cities. He looked worn, pale for real this time, with tremor-thin fingers and scabbed knuckles. He admitted the whole illness was fabricated. It started as an excuse to skip a math test. My parents overreacted. Doctors couldn't disprove subjective symptoms, and the attention filled a hole inside him. Each year the lie escalated until it rotted everything around him, but quitting felt impossible once people depended on the performance. I asked, "Why admit it now?" He said, "I'm exhausted." Translation: he needed rescue. I left him with the check and an empty promise to think about helping. On the drive home, my anger crystallized into something useful. Riley listened, nodded, and suggested we weaponize the truth. First, I needed proof. I offered to talk further but asked to use Zoom. I recorded everything, prompting for detail. How he'd researched autonomic disorders, how he'd slipped a family pulse oximeter onto a friend with tachycardia to fake readings, how he'd watched me cancel a graduation trip while secretly messaging friends about Fortnite tournaments. When he finished, I saved the file 3 times. Next, we gathered leverage. Riley's friend Sam, an insurance fraud lawyer, almost spilled his coffee hearing the figure my parents' policy had reimbursed. Over 200 grand in 5 years. "They'll prosecute," he said. "Hard." We drafted agreements. My parents would reimburse me for documented losses, tuition deposit, airfare, therapy copays, totaling $26,400 plus 5% interest, attend 12 family therapy sessions, and publish a public apology. Liam would enroll in rehab and post his own apology. Non-compliance triggered delivery of the confession to the fraud division. After that, I invited Mom and Dad to lunch at their favorite trattoria. They arrived smiling like hostages, pretending everything was fine. I played the video. Mom shook, fork frozen halfway to her mouth. Dad went gray. I slid the documents across the table. Mom whispered, "You wouldn't ruin his life." I said, "He ruined ours. I'm offering a payment plan." Dad's pen trembled, but he signed. Then I dealt with Liam. His apartment stank of spilled beer and scented candles. I laid out the rehab form. He refused until I pulled out earbuds and played his own confession back at triple volume. He signed. Revenge doesn't need shouting. It needs paperwork. Finally, public accountability. At 6 p.m. sharp, the identical Facebook posts went live. Comments exploded. Relatives expressing shock. High school classmates feeling vindicated. A few trolls claiming big pharma conspiracy. I saved every comment. The next morning, my parents attended therapy. Liam checked into rehab. The machine had finally jammed, and I was the wrench. You might wonder why I didn't nuke them sooner. Loyalty is a slow-acting poison. Every time I packed a suitcase at college, Mom sent a group text. Update. Liam fainted again, but he's a fighter. I'd read that while stapling a research paper and feel like Nero fiddling. So I'd call, listen to her break down medical jargon she'd Googled, promise to visit soon, then stare at my bank balance. The guilt wired itself into my veins. My breaking point wasn't actually the wedding. It was a Tuesday, 4 months before, at 2 p.m., in a conference room where my manager was detailing promotions. I'd been working 80-hour weeks, angling for a senior analyst slot. My phone lit up. Mom. I hit silent. A minute later, a text flashed. Emergency, call now. I excused myself, heart pounding, imagining ambulances. She picked up, sobbing. Liam had a migraine and needed me to Venmo him $60 for a rideshare to urgent care because he'd spent his stipend on live stream donations instead of groceries. That was the promotion meeting I lost by walking out. I realized Liam wasn't the only fraud. I was faking being okay, and it was costing me my actual future. Therapy gave me scripts. When Mom guilt-tripped, I responded, "I'm confident the medical professionals have it handled." When Dad appealed to duty, I asked him to quantify the favor in dollars and hours. Data drained their arguments of emotional color. Planning the wedding became a sandbox for practicing boundaries. Mom tried to add her church friends to the guest list. I told her the venue capped at 60. She offered to pay for a larger space. I said the trio we'd booked didn't amplify to bigger venues. She suggested swapping to a DJ. I stopped replying. Each dead email chain felt like snipping a puppet string. Meanwhile, Liam escalated. He posted vague hospital selfies, every IV line carefully framed. Internet strangers sent him money. One day he tagged me, writing, "My sister thinks my illness is an inconvenience to her big day." He deleted it after an hour, but screenshots spread. Old classmates messaged asking how I could be so heartless. Riley suggested I post a rebuttal. I declined. "Never wrestle a pig," I said, quoting her dad. "You both get dirty, and the pig likes it." Instead, I gathered receipts, screenshots of posts deleted, Venmo requests, text threads of him bragging about skipping finals. I built a digital dossier. Revenge is best served with Dropbox permissions. The night before our flight to Greece, Liam left a voicemail whisper crying that he feared he wouldn't live to see me again. I saved the file but never replied. On the island, surrounded by cobalt sea, Riley and I toasted to silence. Back stateside, after Liam's confession, I spent evenings drafting our ultimatum documents. Sam coached me on tone. Professional, non-emotional, clear consequences. We added a clause requiring my parents to reimburse their insurance carrier if prosecution occurred. That scared them more than owing me money. Fear, I learned, is a sharper motivator than love for people who traffic in manipulation. During the Trattoria showdown, Mom tried to pivot blame, claiming they'd acted on professional advice. I slid over copies of pediatrician notes, clearly stating no abnormalities. Dad argued that illness could be psychogenic yet real. I agreed, handed him brochures for a family support group for factitious disorder, and pointed out enrollment was not optional per the contract. Watching their faces cycle through denial, bargaining, and defeat was like viewing a time-lapse of erosion. With signatures secured, I moved to the public phase. Liam begged for a grace period before posting. I offered 24 hours. He tried to negotiate 48. I reminded him orange jumpsuits clash with his aesthetic. He hit publish at 6 on the dot, then threw his phone so hard it spiderwebbed. I didn't flinch. Fallout was immediate. A mutual cousin studying pre-med wrote a blistering comment thread about resource drain in healthcare. A family friend demanded refund of GoFundMe donations. Someone compiled a TikTok timeline of Liam's hospital selfies over a trap beat. It went minor viral. I watched with clinical detachment. I wasn't enjoying his pain exactly. I was observing justice, like watching a crooked shelf finally level when you tighten the last screw. Rehab intake was rocky. Liam tried to claim a wheat allergy to avoid cafeteria food. Staff requested documentation. He had none. Consequences: meet habitual liar. I attended the first family day not to support him, but to ensure compliance. He attempted to hug me. I stepped back, said we weren't at that stage, maybe never would be. In therapy, Mom cried about losing the narrative that had united the family. The therapist, an older woman with salt and pepper hair and zero tolerance for nonsense, asked Mom to list 5 personal interests that didn't revolve around Liam. Mom named precisely one: fundraising for awareness. The therapist raised an eyebrow and wrote something on her pad. Dad kept quoting scripture about forgiveness until the therapist reminded him repentance precedes absolution. I almost smiled. The process wasn't painless. Extended relatives accused me of tearing the family apart. I replied once, linking the confession video, and then muted threads. My block list grew. Riley printed it, framed it, and gave it to me as a gag gift titled Wall of Nope. It hangs in our hallway. 3 months in, Dad missed a therapy session. I sent a polite reminder of the contract's consequences, including a CC to Sam. Dad replied, "Understood," and rescheduled. The power dynamic flipped so fully I sometimes felt dizzy. 6 months post-wedding, Liam completed rehab. He tried to host a live apology stream. Viewer count hovered at 12, half of them trolls. He ended it mid-sob, claiming chest pain. Paramedics arrived. EKG normal. Old habits die boring. Mom's therapy unearthed her childhood need to feel needed. Dad admitted equating masculinity with stoic caregiving. They started couples counseling. I watched from afar, curiosity mild, compassion still out for delivery. Last week's family therapy session, the 12th and final, Ended with Mom asking if she could attend my eventual baby shower. I said that invitation would depend on continued evidence of change and the passing of time. She nodded. Progress, maybe. Am I proud of my vengeance? Yes. It was methodical, proportional, and above all, legal. No property damaged, no threats, just sunlight and spreadsheets. Greed and guilt don't survive sunlight. My life now is centered on smaller, brighter things. Learning Japanese after our trip, brewing citrus-infused cold brew, training for a half marathon Riley roped me into. When the radiator hisses at dawn, I imagine it saying mine, mine, mine. And for once, the possessive feels healthy. If you're still reading, I'll leave you with the same tool my therapist gave me. A 3-column journal. Column 1, request made. Column 2, my immediate emotion. Column 3, objective reality. Filling it daily taught me to spot manipulation in real time. The first time Mom texted Liam in hospital again, Column 3 exposed zero proof, and I didn't board a plane. Here ends my story. No neat ribbon, but sturdy knots tying off old wounds. Revenge didn't restore lost years, but it stopped the bleeding, and that's enough for me. Now you know everything.